there's no better place than this country and this city to incubate a new business idea. If you want to build a business on the continent of Africa, there's just no better place.
You're one of the lucky people who gotten time to actually spend time with the man, President Kagame. What's your reading of the man? What do you think makes him tick?
I think he's incredibly passionate about this country, and it is such a pleasure to be in the presence of someone who puts their country before they put anything else, including themselves.
When we spoke last, you told me that it takes longer to get your return on investment in Africa, say vis-a-vis as compared to, say, the US. Why are you trying to expand Zaria Courts across Africa?
So if you wanted to make a safe investment, I will take you to Denver, I will take you to the United States, and I will show you a plethora of safe investments. Here, while it may take a little longer, the return multiple is actually higher. But if we can hang in there and build a few more of these campuses and connect this ecosystem across the continent, I think the return profiles will actually be higher and faster.
Is the very, very best. I introduce the very, very next. Big deal, you know this is the big league. Sanga mumihanda ya Kigali make a big fish. Word on the street turakaze. Habari gani mumeze mte. Yutse nshimi mana kuva honda muchiye. If you want the long form, come close mrabure. Wait, what?
The long form.
What did he say?
The long form.
What?
The long form.
The long form. The long form.
Hello there. My guest this week on the Long Form podcast is Andrew Feinstein, a real estate developer from the American city of Denver. Andrew is part of the team that built the $26 million Zaria Court complex in the Kigali Sports City. In this week's conversation, we discuss the genesis of his love affair with Rwanda and its president, Paul Kagame, his partnership with the former president of the Toronto Raptors, Masai Ujiri, his continental ambitions for the Zaria Court brand, and his dream to revitalize Africa's creaking sports infrastructure.
Before we jump into today's episode, I want to make a deal with you. About 69.5% of you who watched this very podcast haven't hit the subscribe button yet. So here's the deal I want to make with you. If you hit that subscribe button today, I promise you that my team and I will keep making the show better and better in every single way. So go ahead and hit that subscribe button today. And now let's get into the show. Andrew.
Sonny.
Welcome to the Long Form Podcast.
Thank you for having me on. I really appreciate it.
First of all, congratulations on Zaria Courts. You must be proud.
We're very proud. You've known me now for several years. We've been coming to Rwanda, or me personally, I've been coming to Rwanda for 15 years. And to be part of something like this, and to build something in a country that I absolutely love and I consider my second home has been quite an honor. So yeah, very proud.
So let me ask you a question because when you look at the scale of this project, I mean, it's a monster. So just how hard was it to get the project done? I mean, I'm talking about finding the funding, right? $26 million. That's not money that you just pick off a tree. Finding the right piece of land, because obviously you had to find the right piece of land to be able to create something like this. Finding the right management, working with the right teams, finding the right architects. Just how hard was it? And it's taken you 2 years, right? I was here when you guys broke ground. Just how many times did you just want to call it quits and run on back to Denver?
Well, you're asking me a lot of questions at once, so let me try to break them down into different answers. It was hard, but real estate development is hard, and it's kind of regardless of where you're developing. Real estate development just happens to be a very hard profession. I mean, you're trying to land I always tell people with real estate development, you're trying to land 5 airplanes on the runway at the same time. You know, you mentioned just a few of them. You've got to juggle architecture, you've got to juggle finance, you've got to juggle construction, you've got to juggle regulatory environment. And so just in general, development's hard. But when you're a developer, you're in the optimism business, and you have to just imagine what it will look like when it's done. And you have to just, you know, fight through your projects, not fight with your projects, but through your projects and get to the finish line. But maybe just a couple of comments specifically to Rwanda, from a regulatory standpoint, that part actually wasn't hard. The government here, I always tell people the government here is in the yes business. And when you do have a project, like you said, that's a monster that has all these permeations and all these different components to it, you touch just about every piece of the government. I mean, you obviously touch the city of Kigali. You also touch RHA. You work with the security forces. You work with Office of the President. You work with RDB intensely. You work with RCB. You work with all these different layers of the government. And that part of this experience was not hard. It was actually the opposite. That was actually easy.
So what was the hardest part?
So the hardest part for us was there was a lot of geopolitical stuff and more macroeconomic than geopolitical that we just have no control over. We did experience high inflation during the process here. We did experience, when I say geopolitical specifically, with supply chain disruptions in the Middle East. That was a challenge, getting materials here on time. And then a spike in interest rates. So those things were, obstacles that just had to be overcome during the process. But in terms of fundraising, we are very fortunate to have a pool of shareholders, including ourselves, who really believe in this project. They believe in this country, and we're excited to jump on board. I'm not going to pretend the fundraising was easy, but we had a good pool of fundraisers. And then the Bank of Kigali stepped up big time as a local financing partner for our construction loan. And we couldn't have gotten this done without the Bank of Kigali's support. So like I said, it was hard. There's no question about it. But other parts of the project were actually easier than getting things done where I come from.
Did you ever think that this would fail? At any point, did you ever feel like, it's getting too hard? The issues in the Middle East are becoming a bit too impossible. The interest rates are going way too high. We just can't. We should just, call it quits.
Well, I'm not. I guess the short answer is no. And also, a lot of those things happen kind of mid-project. Okay, so so I didn't have a choice, right? Once you put those shovels in the ground and once you get started on construction, you have to finish. One thing they don't teach you at business school is the number one thing in business is momentum. Yeah. You have to get your project done. And so, a lot of those disruptions had happened already after we had already started. And, frankly, I'm glad they happened after we started because it left us no choice but to finish. And now it's done. Now that it's done, I think we're going to be the beneficiaries of a lot of other projects that couldn't get done because of those macro obstacles that we just discussed. And I think that, the other thing I've learned in my career is you've got to get things done when times are tough. And that way they open when times are better.
You talked about geopolitical challenges. Was there any, as an American businessman, obviously you kind of flow with not U.S. policy, but kind of like where the U.S. policy is kind of going. Over the last 2 years, there's, more than 2 years, it's been close to 5 years. There's been issues around Rwanda and the DRC. Has that geopolitical problem also kind of created maybe a nervousness or I guess some hesitation with your U.S. investors? Or do they just say, nah, this is a good business deal? This is...
Well, I'm not sure it's one or the other. Our shareholders, in alignment with Masai Ujiri, who, we have to give a lot of credit to Masai, who really is kind of the vision behind this, along with His Excellency President Kagame. They really set the tone of we have to invest in sports infrastructure. We have to invest in sports, entertainment, and cultural infrastructure. And the reason I mentioned that in answer to your question is that's really like the guiding light of everything we do. We're investing in sports, entertainment, and cultural infrastructure. And that really cuts through, or whatever phrase you want to use, cuts through
the politics.
We are doing this for reasons that supersede politics. We're doing this for reasons that bring people together. At the Giants of Africa basketball camp, as we're sitting here today, there are youth from the DRC and Rwanda playing basketball together in the BK Arena.
Yeah.
Where else is that happening in the world? So we really want to be the team that brings people together through the power of sports, entertainment, and culture. Really important. And so with that guiding light in mind, the U.S. shareholders that we do have in the deal, and we only have a few, by the way, we have a pretty eclectic group of shareholders, but all of our shareholders are very sophisticated. All of our shareholders understand what's going on in the world. And all of our shareholders understand that, Rwanda is actually a beacon of stability and good governance and transparency. And it's a great place to launch a business in Africa. And they all understand that, with notwithstanding whatever the geopolitical situation is at the time.
Before we continue, if you live in Kigali, what do you do to stay strong and healthy? Do you want to get fit without breaking the bank? If you are like me and the answer is a resounding yes, join Waka Fitness, Kigali's top fitness hub, with expert-led workouts in a state-of-the-art facility, high-end equipment, and an unbeatable community vibe. And here's the best part. As a listener of this podcast, you get 20% off your membership. The thing is, this deal ends in August. So just hit the link in the description, waka.fitbase.rw/thelongform, or scan the QR code on your screen. Join Waka today. Get strong, feel good, and live life abundantly.
As you go through life's ups and downs, right? There's always a lesson that you can take. I try to, when I'm at my highs, I try to learn lessons about myself. When I'm at my lows, that's especially when I learn the most. What has the 2 years process of creating Zaria taught you about yourself?
About myself? Oh boy, that's a good one. What has it taught me about myself? It's taught me that, you just have to be a problem solver. You can't, maybe I'm trying to answer your question. You don't need to be dramatic about anything. Just solve the problem of the day. It's not going to take down your project. And so I think that that's just what this project taught me. Every day I woke up. So remember, I do live in the US. I'm here a lot, but I'm in the US probably 2/3 of the time, and I'm probably here 1/3 of the time. And so I wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning, 5 o'clock in the morning, to nothing but WhatsApps and emails of, hey, we need your answer on this. We need your help on this. And I just learned not to let that, ruin your day. Don't get dramatic about it. Just solve the problem. You've got great teammates here. Empower them to solve the issues. And that would be a big lesson I took from this. Because when you're on the time zone, when the problems come up, you can kind of deal with them in real time. It's tough to wake up to problems and you're already 4 to 5 hours behind in tackling it. But so maybe that's a lesson learned, is just don't get dramatic about it. Deal with the problem, deal with the issue, and empower your team on the ground to handle it.
Yeah. I'd like to ask, when you think about the concept of Zaria Courts, right? So that's a multi-use space that incorporates hospitality, food and beverage, entertainment, sports, and retail shopping. When you think about this, it's fundamentally a no-brainer. It's not rocket science. It's like when you see it in action, you're like, of course it makes sense. I mean, I was here at like I've said, I've kind of been with you from the get-go. I've been here I've known you before the idea became more than that. I kind of watched the groundbreaking. I was here as well. And you were kind enough to invite me to the opening. So I've seen it. And now that I've seen it, I'm like, this absolutely makes sense. Like, of course it makes sense. It's kind of like the same thing with the arena. It's like, of course, why wouldn't you want to have an amazing arena where great artists can perform? And so a lot of these things, sometimes you don't know just how necessary they are until they are there. Then you're like, of course. Why now? Why hasn't this thing been attempted before in Kigali? Why hasn't it been attempted across East Africa? Why am I not seeing, maybe not Zaria, and maybe we'll talk about the ambitions that you have, but something like this? And why hasn't it not been attempted before? And why have you attempted it here in Kigali?
Well, maybe going backwards to answer your questions. As I said just a few minutes ago, there's no better place than this country and this city to incubate a new business idea. If you want to build a business on the continent of Africa, there's just no better place. Masai and I tell a joke. I'm not sure it's funny, but if we had chosen another country, and I don't want to disparage any other countries, but had we chosen another country other than Rwanda to do the first Zaria Court, we'd still be talking about doing a Zaria Court as opposed to be sitting here with you. And what a great honor it is to sit with you in the podcast studio of Zaria Court that is now completed. Yeah, we'd still be talking and not completing. And so that's maybe to answer your last question. As far as the no-brainer thing, again, we have to give your government and your leadership a lot of credit. I mean, it took a lot of vision, took a lot of courage to invest in that arena and Amahoro Stadium. That took a lot of courage. And when we had the privilege of touring these grounds with His Excellency after the completion of those venues, he challenged us with a question. He said, well, what else is needed here? And Masai and I took that challenge really seriously and kind of brainstormed on what belongs here. And we came to the conclusion that, a sports, entertainment, and cultural district, similar to what you do see on the Western side of the world, is needed. Because if you think about it, every arena and stadium on this continent, and there's very few arenas, but there are a number of stadiums, they're just sitting in parking lots. They're surrounded by nothing, and yet we live in a world where young people want to, live, work, and play in the same place. Okay, well, in this case, maybe I should say, sleep, work, and play in the same place, because we're in the co-working space here at Zaria Court. So we wanted to bring that paradigm to Africa. And for us, just gut feel, this was a no-brainer, but you got to build it for other people to realize it.
Yeah. President Kagame isn't in the business of opening every Tom, Dick, and Harry, real estate venture, right? So, I mean, if he was, literally, he would not have time to do other things. Like, there's always something happening in Kigali. There's always a building going up. There are malls and supermarkets and all that. But there's a reason he's taken a particular interest in Zaria. Why do you think it is?
Well, I think this is an extension of his and his team's vision that, we use the acronym MICE, right? Meetings, conventions, events, and you should probably add an S to the end of it, which would be sports. This country has made meetings, conventions, events, and sports and tourism a top priority. All those kind of fall into the same bucket, right? A top priority. Let's be frank. It's a landlocked country. It's a small country. And the number one resource in this country is its people. And the best way to amplify those people, the best way to give those people a better opportunity into the future is to bring the world here. And the best way to bring the world here is through all of those tourism related components. So sports leads the way. His Excellency's made a huge investment in sports. We are an extension of that investment. And I believe that's why he has taken such a keen interest in what we're doing. I hope we've been good partners. And I don't know what's said about us behind closed doors, but I hope that we are considered as good partners.
You're one of the lucky people who've gotten time to actually spend time with the man, President Kagame. You've spent, because of the Zaria Courts and also because of, obviously, your friendship with Masai. What's your reading of the man? What do you think makes him tick?
I think he's incredible. Again, this is just my editorial
That's
opinion.
why I'm asking.
I think he's incredibly passionate about this country, and it is such a pleasure to be in the presence of someone who puts their country before they put anything else, including themselves. When you run a country, when you run, where I come from, when you run a state or even a city, you're married to that state. You're married to that city. In this case, you're married to that country. It's an obligation that I don't think most of us can appreciate. And I just have the utmost respect for him on that. And then I think, so that's number one. Passion and love for this country is number one. The other sense I get, having gotten to know him just a little bit, I don't know him nearly as well as Masai does, but he's an incredibly hard worker. And I think he's, just what I've heard kind of secondhand through friends of mine that work with him, he is always on, he's never off.
Yeah.
And that's something that I really relate to and I really respect. And I tell people all the time, what's Rwanda like? I say, well, Rwanda was built on two things: love and hard work, and at a time where there are so many voices out there that are trying to divide us with hateful rhetoric, and trying to find an easy way to get things done, nothing's easy. And so to be part of something where, the backbone of this country is built on love and hard work, it's pretty awesome.
Your team, the team that you manage, right? So with Masai and another friend of mine, Kyle Schofield of QA, you're not just running, Zaria. You're also running BK Arena. Congratulations, obviously, because of the naming rights deal. That's, I think, probably, as Kyle likes to call it, the biggest naming rights deal on the African continent for an arena. So congratulations. So you're running Amahoro, you're running Petit Stade, you're running Zaria. One of the things with these big African infrastructures, at least I not even just African, because we've seen it in places like, say, Montreal, when they did the Montreal Olympics back in, I think, in the 70s. Mm-hmm. They built these amazing things. I think that's also a challenge that's happening in Brazil following the World Cup, as well as South Africa following their World Cup, right? So they built these amazing stadia for the world to come and enjoy the country. And then 3, 4, 5, 10 years down the line, they're in a state of disrepair. That's fundamentally always been the story of African big sports projects. You have a task, because you're in the business of making money. You have a task of not just operating these infrastructures, but to also make a profit, right? You're a businessman. How do you do that? And how do you make sure that you don't turn our jewels of Kigali into just one of Africa's newest white elephants?
Yeah, it's a great question. Part of our investment thesis for Zaria Court and QA, and certainly tip of the hat to Kyle Schofield. I mean, Kyle's done an unbelievable job here in market. That's how I know you. That's how I know a lot of my friends here in Rwanda. And Kyle's just done a phenomenal job. Kyle and the team at QA Venue Solutions in terms of managing the BK Arena, and they will. I should say we now, because now we're a we. We will do a great job in managing Amahoro Stadium. First of all, it just starts with, I think a lot of these countries, I don't say anything disparaging about another country, but I think in a lot of cases, those facilities are not only owned by, but they're actually managed by the government. Yeah. And just right from the start, the governments are not really in the business of making money. No. Okay. Governments have some basic obligations. One of them is to keep their people safe. One of them is to provide basic infrastructure. One is to make sure that children are educated. They have all these priorities. booking concerts and sporting events is not exactly at the top of the list of priorities. So we would like to encourage governments, especially those that are listening to this show, to call us and let us come in, and we will manage those stadiums, because we do have a lens of as a business person, and we do want to make a profit, and that desire or need to run a profitable business will fill those buildings and will ensure that they're managed properly. In the case here, again, let's pay President Kagame a compliment. You know, he had the vision to ensure that management was in place when the arena opened. Now, the timing was a little off because we got hit with COVID, yes. But as soon as COVID was over, management was in place. You know, I remember being here in May of 2021, 4 years ago, for the Basketball Africa League finals. I was wearing my mask, and you know, Emmanuel Macron was a few rows behind me, but hey, we did it. We had a basketball game on here, right? And so I think that, you know, just the fact that there's a third-party private enterprise managing your venues, as you said, your jewels, is a huge first step to ensuring that they don't become white elephants. And then, you know, we're already programming BK Arena with countless events throughout the year. Stadiums are admittedly more challenging. They're really big. It's really hard to find events for 45,000 people. But we will figure it out, just like we figured it out with BK Arena.
Do you want to break any news? Do we can we expect Chris Brown soon?
Okay, I was going to tell you Taylor Swift is coming to Kigali. But jokes aside, you know, we also, you know, beyond the management, you know, we do have relationships in the music festival world. We do have relationships in the management world. Obviously, we have relationships in the sports world, and we're going to be really aggressive and proactive. I mean, just today alone, and I'm not going to tell you who with whom, but today alone, we're going to be touring a group that does international music festivals through Amahoro Stadium, who are here for the Giants of Africa Festival. Well, if there's no Giants of it, let's just work ourselves backwards a little bit. When people say, well, why did you build an arena in Rwanda? Of all the things you could have done, why did you build an arena? Well, here's an example. Built an arena. Now we have a festival here all week. We have hundreds and hundreds of youth from across the continent. We have hundreds and hundreds of guests from sports, from entertainment, from business, international media, all here. And it just so happens that some of the guests that are here do international music festivals, and they're getting a tour of the stadium today. Will that lead to a music festival down the road? We're going to do everything we can to make that happen. So that's why you build these things. And sometimes you don't know exactly when they pay off, but they pay off.
You know, you are... And it's interesting that you kind of like almost answered my next question, but let me see if we can go a bit deeper into what you just talked about, right? So local and external critics of Rwanda as a underdeveloped nation, right? They look at our spend on, say, for example, the Kigali golf course. They look at our spend on the arena. They look at their spend on the stadium. They look at our potential spend on, say, F1, the F1 track in Bugesera, and they say these are just vanity projects. Now, there are those who will push back, say, from government and say, no, that we know what we're doing. This will be an economic driver. You fundamentally don't have a dog in the fight, right? You are one of the few people who know the numbers of how property works, how development, one thing leads to another. Looking at, and maybe you can answer this question, looking at some of the work that you've done back in Denver about how you've been able to create value from a place that fundamentally was undervalued. Give us a quick masterclass, right?
Yeah.
Why sports? Why facilities? Why development in these kind of things? How do they create long-term value? Starting with, say, what you've done in Denver, and also what you've done here with, say, Zaria, and how it's been an economic driver of everything.
I am from Denver, Colorado. I'm a proud, very proud Denverite. And in Denver, Colorado, so in the 1990s, early 1990s, late 1980s, early 1990s, in Denver, Colorado, our downtown was a ghost town. It had a lot of old distressed property. It had some old rail yards, lots of parking lots, and people may have gone into their office to go to work, but at 5 o'clock they went home, and downtown Denver was a ghost town. There was nobody there. You could throw a rock through the middle of downtown Denver at 5:05 p.m. on an afternoon. You wouldn't hit anybody. Okay, there was nobody there. So the civic leaders of Denver. Now I was a young person at the time. I'm not taking credit for any of this. I'm a bystander. But the city leaders of Denver at the time had the foresight to bring a baseball team to Denver, and they built a stadium in the heart of downtown Denver. It's where a team called the Colorado Rockies plays baseball.
Did people in Denver complain about that spend?
They did. They complained about the spend.
They said it was a waste of.
Correct. They increased our sales taxes, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. They said this is going to be a financial boondoggle. We'll never pay back the bonds, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So they built what was called Coors Field, and it was built in the mid 1990s. And here we are 30 years later. And that stadium in the heart of a desolate part of Denver, no different than Amahoro Stadium or BK Arena. I wouldn't, in the heart of a part of, this was a very dormant part of Kigali. I mean, this is a 160 acre campus that was somewhat dormant, right? I mean, the old Amahoro Stadium was here, but somewhat dormant.
It was dormant.
And that development in Denver ignited development in our entire downtown. For 2 miles we use miles, for 2 miles in every direction. And then where I come into play is my company in Denver. We were the beneficiaries of that, because as the development continued to grow around the stadium, we came into play, and there was an old warehouse district just a mile away from that stadium that remained underdeveloped. And we took an old warehouse and we turned it into an event center. And we can put 2,500 people in our event center, and we do music, we do concerts, we do weddings, we do trade shows, we do conferences, we do political rallies, we do everything in that event center. We've had Bill Clinton in our building, we've had Kamala Harris in our building, we've had Michelle Obama in our building, and so we've become kind of like a Zaria Court, a multi-purpose event space near a stadium. And so I've had a front row seat to what sports and entertainment infrastructure does to reinvigorate a neighborhood and an economy. Back to our project in Denver. When we bought that city block that has our event center, there were 4 jobs on the block. Today, we have 250 jobs on the block. Here we are at Zaria Court. Zaria Court alone, 500 new jobs. And so anyone who questions the why invest in arenas, why invest in stadiums, why invest in sports infrastructure, there's an economic multiplier that I almost think is underrated. And it's so important. I mean, you referenced our number of our investment value here of 26 million. That's a substantive investment. That investment doesn't get made if that stadium and that arena isn't right there. And so I think that, look, it says the long form here on my coffee cup. We're playing the long game here, and it is a long game. But these investments in sports and entertainment infrastructure that your government is making are going to pay off.
Yeah, I mean, it's a huge discussion about, I guess, immediate needs versus long-term gain, and I think the systems that have been applied to Africa have always been about, very short-term gains. And I think the thinking that President Kagame and his government have kind of like said, okay, we are here. Yes, we are, as people will rightly say, we are a poor landlocked country, but we could be more. And I like the fact that you brought in the fact that these are 500 jobs that were created here. That's really important, and it's important that people understand that, because it can't just be, look, we have an amazing stadium. It has to be something more. And people need to understand that, their tax money, because that's fundamentally their tax money, it will go into something. I would like to just understanding the Denver model, right? So how much did this, I guess, Coors Field cost? Do you remember? It was like what? 200, 300, 400 million dollars?
Probably in that range. Again, that was 30 years ago.
Yeah.
So adjusted for inflation, it would be today, it would be $1 billion.
$1 billion.
Yeah.
Right. And what do you think because of that? You said there's been a change in everything 2 miles around Coors Field, including your facility. What do you think has been the value of that development when we, there was say $1 billion that was spent by the public purse? How much do you think has been brought into, say, the Denver economy because of just that one thing?
I'm sure it's had a 3 to 4 times multiplier effect. I'm sure, we've seen land values go up 3 to 4 times. We've seen wages go up. We've seen companies incubate themselves. I talk a lot about the live, work, play model. And in Denver, we've done that really successfully. I mean, if you live downtown and you work downtown, you can also play downtown. You don't have to leave downtown. It's really something. And I always would encourage any of our friends from this part of the world to come with me for a full tour. I give a great tour, and you can see how it all comes together. And it's had a huge multiplier effect. Denver as an economy, our GDP is like $250 billion just as a city. Now that's not because of a baseball stadium, but every little thing we've done. And I'll give you another one that we did in Denver at the same time. So this will be analogous to Rwanda. In the mid 1990s, the city of Denver delivered 2 things: the new baseball stadium, which we've talked about, and a new airport. And tell me if this sounds familiar. Yeah. Our new airport was 45 minutes away from the heart of the city in the quote, end quote, middle of nowhere. And they spent way too much money on it, and it took too long to build, and everybody complained about it. And here we are 30 years later, and the Denver airport, even though we are the 19th biggest city in America, the Denver airport is the 3rd busiest airport in America. It's the 6th busiest airport in the world. They move 75 million passengers a year through that airport. And remember, your airport is the first thing and it's the last thing that everybody sees who comes to visit you. And so I think what you're doing with your new airport at Bugesera here, it'll get done when it gets done, will be a game changer for this country and for this region and for this continent. And so that's just something I want you to think about. Denver did a stadium and an airport. Rwanda's doing a stadium and an airport.
Yeah. So when we spoke last, you told me that it takes longer to get your return on investment in Africa, say vis-a-vis as compared to, say, the US. Almost 3 or 4 times as long. So if that indeed is the case, that it just takes longer for, say, a property development to earn money and give you your return on investment, why are you trying to expand Zaria Courts across Africa? Because I understand why Masai is doing it, right? He's a son of the soil. He's like, you know what? I'm tired of, I want African things in Africa. I want great things in Africa. I understand Masai, right? He's literally half Nigerian, half East African. He's
an honorary Rwandan.
And honorary Rwandan. Like I understand his ambition for the continent. You're a white boy from Denver. I understand his mission. What's your mission in this? Why are you could make money easier probably back home. What's your mission?
Yeah, there's a yes, but to that answer. I can talk about maybe the personal side of it, and then maybe I'll talk about the professional side of it. On the personal side, I like big, complicated projects. I like building stuff on the front end. What we've done in Denver has been very successful. I'm very blessed. It's afforded me the opportunity to take risks in this part of the world.
Yeah.
But the stuff we did in Denver that was so hard and it was so complicated to take this distressed and dilapidated neighborhood and bring it back to life. I did it. It's done.
Yeah.
And I don't have like my next thing there, and that as we kind of wrapped up what we did there and this started ramping up, it was really good timing for me to throw myself into something new that's big and it's complicated. And this isn't just about Rwanda, as you mentioned. This is about Africa.
Yeah.
This is about expanding. I mean, to me, again, personally, this is a once in a lifetime opportunity to be part of something that, how often do you get to build an ecosystem on the continent of Africa in your life? And then to work with someone like Masai, who's, we're friends first, we're partners second, but, even with those two things, I'm still in awe of his, vision and ambition and evangelism for sports infrastructure. And I want to help him deliver it. And it's just really, to me, that gets me out of bed in the morning. So from a cutthroat business standpoint, just a professional standpoint, dollars and cents, I do talk about Denver a lot, but, yes, it's easier to make money, but the returns are actually pretty low. There's so much capital chasing safe assets in the United States and Denver in particular that, you used to stick your neck out on a deal, and you were playing for double-digit returns, and you had maybe 4 to 5 times multiples on your investment. Things that get business guys out of bed in the morning. Those returns don't exist anymore.
Yeah,
it's become too safe. It's almost become like Western Europe. And on top of that, our growth is very tepid. Our growth is very, very tepid. So if you wanted to make a safe investment, I will take you to Denver. I will take you to the United States, and I will show you a plethora of safe investments. Here, while it may take a little longer, the return multiple is actually higher. You do get compensated for your risk, should things work out the way that we think they will. And then, it does take longer to get a return on investment in maybe Rwanda or in Africa today. But if we can hang in there and build a few more of these campuses and connect this ecosystem across the continent, I think the return profiles will actually be higher and faster. But you just got to start somewhere.
Yeah. So you've started somewhere. You've started in Kigali. Where are you going next?
Well, we have a list of targeted cities. You mentioned Masai is a son of Nigeria and a son of Kenya. So you can kind of,
Lagos and
Nairobi. I think that if you're going to be in the business of activating sports, entertainment, and cultural infrastructure on the continent of Africa, you've got to be in the key markets. Kigali is one of them, but you've got to be in Nairobi. You've got to be in Lagos, and then Johannesburg is at the top of our list. Accra, Abidjan, Dakar,
Cairo.
I would love to jump into Cairo. North Africa is a very different place that I don't understand as well as Sub-Saharan Africa. But we would love to do something in North Africa as well.
Tell me about, we've kind of like talked about Masai quite a bit, but we get to see, we see who he is, right? He's been a public persona for a decade or so now, with his work in, the NBA, the work around Giants of Africa, his relationship in, with the people of Rwanda and its leadership. But we kind of see him, but we don't really know him. So just tell me more about your friend and business partner. What's he really like when, there are no lights, there's no media, there are no cameras following him around? When it's just the both of you just, chatting, discussing business, discussing family. I know, I've met your family as well and his. What's the real man like?
Well, I'm glad you used the word family. He's definitely a family first. He's a family first guy. He's taught me to be family first. He's an awesome. He's just an awesome, a dad, a husband, just a really honorable family guy, which I think is really important. And I'll tell you, you talk about his public persona. There's not a big gap between what you see Masai on stage and what you see Masai in private. If anything, in private, he may be more passionate and even a stronger advocate for what has to get done on this continent. He just is passionately, I would say, almost obsessed with moving sports, entertainment, and cultural infrastructure forward on this continent because he's had a front row seat to how it benefits youth. Yeah. And he lives with that. He walks with that. As a partner, I've already used the word honorable, and he's incredibly honorable. He's got great integrity. One thing that I'll mention that probably doesn't get written about or talked about is Masai is willing to do anything that he would ask somebody else to do.
What do you mean?
So Masai and I have gotten on airplanes from North America to Africa. We will fly all the way for 1 day of meetings if the meetings are needed. We will do whatever it takes. We will get in the car. We will drive for hours. We will look at properties. We will meet with political leaders. We will meet with business leaders. He is literally willing to do whatever it takes to get this ecosystem to move forward. And that's something that I don't think the cameras show. That's kind of the behind the scenes work. And then just all the late night phone calls, all the early morning phone calls, the Zooms, the MS Teams meetings. He's very, very present and very available. He is not just a name on the door. He is the engine behind this.
It's you two are. I wouldn't call you strange bedfellows, but one guy is athlete, then NBA executive, then NBA president. African, proudly African. Then there's you, Andrew, former cartoonist.
You did your homework. Sonny did his homework.
Property developer.
Yeah. Boy
from Denver. How do you two even become friends?
That's a great question. So when I was 13 years old in my history class in middle school, our teacher made us get a subscription to The Economist. And for some reason, I always went to the Africa section first. I have no idea why. And then fast forward years later, I was a young adult. I came to Africa for my first trip as a tourist. And I always tell people...
that's what, 2010?
2010. And I always tell people tourism, again, why invest in tourism? I'm sitting here right now in a multi-million-dollar campus that's going to help create 500 jobs. I am friends with Masai Ujiri. I am partners with Masai Ujiri. I've gotten to meet His Excellency. Why? Tourism. Tourism brought me here. I came here in 2010 to see the gorillas. And look at how it's paid off, right? You just never know. So in 2010, I came to Rwanda to see the gorillas. I went to Kenya to go on safari. I went to South Africa to participate in the World Cup. And I went back to Denver that summer, and the Nuggets had just hired Masai. And I was just growing my real estate investment business. I was just growing our hospitality business back home. I did have a Nuggets fan website called denverstiffs.com, which gave me an entree to the Nuggets ownership group. And a member of the Nuggets ownership group introduced me to Masai at a preseason game. Yeah. And I don't know exactly how we were introduced, but I think it was something like, you just got back from Africa and he's African. You guys should meet. And
you have lots.
You have lots to talk about. And I'm probably one of the very few guys in Denver, at least back then, that knew his stuff in Africa. And Masai and I really hit it off. I think we bonded over Africa. I think we bonded over basketball. We bonded over business. And generously, from almost like that day forward, Masai said, "You should come with me to Africa." And from 2011 to this day, I've had the honor and the privilege of traveling with Masai to 18 African countries. That's a lot, including this one many, many times, as you know. And that's how we met. And that was kind of the foundation of our friendship.
By investing your time, because money is a thing, but like your time, you've done this over the last couple of years. You've late nights, early mornings, stress, so much. I can't imagine just how much stress you've had to undergo trying to get this off the ground and get it running, and money, and then meeting people and glad handling and dealing with crises. It wasn't easy. I can't imagine it was. But by doing all these things, you were putting your money where your mouth was, right? You were like, okay, we're going to build this thing. It was, I would call it a full-throated endorsement of not just, Rwanda's sports and tourism ecosystem, because you don't spend $26 million without the thought that, I'm getting my money back. And I'm getting my money back in good time. I'm getting my money back seamlessly. And I have good partners around me. You wouldn't have spent that kind of money, that kind of stress, if you did not have a full trust in the system and the economic fundamentals that underwrite the entire system, right? So kind of like saying, you know what, Rwanda's sports tourism ecosystem makes sense. Why are you so bullish? Beyond, everyone talks about, President Kagame. But this will outlive him. It will outlive you. You've put together something that hopefully 50 years from now will be still creating value. Maybe you would have zhuzhed it up a bit, but it will still be creating value. Why are you so bullish on Brand Rwanda?
On Brand Rwanda?
Yes.
Oh gosh, I think you pick your analogy, right? Some people say it's the Singapore of Africa, it's the Switzerland of Africa. I think Singapore is a great analogy. I think or the Dubai of Africa. Pick your analogy. We were very bullish. We trust and fundamentally believe that His Excellency is building a structure and a system here. Like you just said, it's bigger than any one person, and it will outlive any one person. And we're going to look back at this country decades from now and say he and they. Remember, there's a lot of they. There's actually more they than he, and that's an important note. And Masai and I talk about this a lot, even with this project. I appreciate that I'm on this show with you today, and it's great that Masai and myself get to do interviews like this. But we're part of a bigger team. We may set the vision and the tone, but there's a lot of hands in this pot that work on these things, and the architects of what you would want to call the new Rwanda that's now 31 years old. We will look back decades from now and say those men and women were right. They got it right. And that's why we're so bullish on Rwanda. It's easier to keep things. It's easier to keep things going when they're already stable and they're already well organized than to have to reboot that from scratch. So we believe that the systems here, the structures here will, as you just said, will outlive all of us, just like this place is going to outlive all of us. And the output of that is we're very bullish on what'd you say, Brand Rwanda?
Brand Rwanda.
Brand Rwanda.
But again, you're a numbers guy, right? So what you've given me is you really should stand for a political position back home. I mean, it was a great.
A good political answer.
Yeah. But then I actually want to, okay, you're a businessman, right? You're not, it's not about, it's numbers, it's balance sheet. So give me, I want a better answer. I want a businessman's answer. You sound like an ideologue, right? You sound like, you just, someone could be like, you know what? He's drunk the Kool-Aid, right? The Kool-Aid of Brand Rwanda, the next Singapore. But what are the things? What is the data telling you? Because you're not going to spend this kind of money on just your feeling.
Yeah. So
what's the data?
Yeah, I wish I had more hard data for you, and you're going to smirk at me when I answer this question. So a lot of business, I do know the numbers. I understand the numbers. I live with the numbers. A lot of it is, you've got to you've got to be able to see around the corner of what's coming. And again, as developers, we're in the optimism business. We tackled back to Denver. We tackled this part of Denver that was distressed and desolate and dangerous, maybe the 3 Ds. And everyone thought we were crazy to invest there. Just like a lot of my friends back home admittedly think, this is pretty ambitious to invest here. And, but if you can see around the corner, we see continued improvement. Let's go back to the investment thesis that we talked about a few minutes ago. If you believe that Rwanda is the best place to incubate a new business endeavor in Africa, while the market here may have room to grow, let's be frank. Let's be frank, right? The GDP per capita still remains,
Extremely
below,
low.
I'm sure, where you and your countrymen want to get it to.
It's literally $1,000.
Yeah, we understand that.
Yeah.
We understand that. And our eyes were wide open to that when we came here. But from just a business standpoint, if Zaria Court Kigali can be part of a Pan-African Zaria Court system, and Kigali is part of that ecosystem across the continent, I think we'll do very well here financially. And as Kigali continues to host events for sports and for meetings and conventions and events and live music and all the things we've also been talking about today, I think we're going to be the beneficiaries of that economically. It would be perhaps disingenuous to say that this can solely be supported by the local economy. So maybe I'm answering your question a little more directly, but it's a hybrid. This has to be accessible and attainable for the local economy. We're gonna ensure that Zaria Court is as an inclusive place, not an exclusive place. That's really important, and that will be seen in our programming, our price points, our room rates, things like that. And it just has to be a hybrid. It has to be accessible to the local economy at all strata of the economy, but also the place to be for everybody who comes in and out of Rwanda.
Yeah. Last question. We talked about you. We kind of like barely mentioned that you were once a cartoonist. One of the things that I when we spoke yesterday, we were talking about like my little journey, right? So law school, went straight into media, then went into comms, then went into strategic comms, now went into farming, then now I'm a podcaster. I've kind of like, my life has not been one thing. Your life, when you were a kid, did you ever think you'd become a developer, a property developer? Was that kind of like on the board?
No. When I was a kid, I had 2 passions. Cartoons and comics, put them in the same bucket, and sports. Those were my 2 passions. And then in my 20s, I went to business school. I didn't go to cartooning school.
Why?
I went to business school. This is where I'll give myself my younger self a little bit of credit. I made a lot of mistakes as a younger person, but this is one of the things I did right. I just felt like if you go to business school and you have a business degree, everything's business. I don't care if you're a farmer. I don't care if you're a podcaster. I don't care if you run a law firm. Everything's business. You got to have a basic understanding of business, no matter what your passion is or your talent is or your vocation is. You have to understand business. So I at least understood at an early age, I need to have a general understanding of business. So I went to business school. And while I was in business school, I created a comic strip about sports. So I then had a career in animation, cartooning, and comics with sports kind of at the center of it. So that kind of married my passions. I kind of stumbled into real estate development, but real estate development and producing animation is the exact same thing. The discipline is exactly the same. And I'll just maybe simplify that for you. One is it's magic. It's magic. Before you think about your cartoon on the screen or your comic on the page, and before you think of, before you sit here at Zaria Court, there was nothing there beforehand. There was nothing. You created it out of your own mind from scratch. That's magic. That's magic. And then the process of producing animated film and the process of developing real estate is almost identical. You know, your idea is your business plan. Your storyboard is your architecture. Your production of animation is your general contractor and your construction period. In animation, you've got to work with television networks and Hollywood studios for approvals and permittings and things of that to get on the air. Here, you got to work with the government to get your approvals and permitting to get off the ground. So there's just a lot of similarities. And in both cases, the lawyers make all the money. So it's a very, very similar discipline. So my career in animation and cartooning prepared me to be a real estate developer.
So here's my last question to you, Andrew, and thank you so much for your time. If you were to talk to your younger self and to give him one piece of advice from like the life you've lived, the lessons you've learned, what would that one piece of advice be?
Ask the question again, please. Ask it again, please.
All right. If you're to talk to your younger self, right? So maybe not even your younger self, maybe 16-year-old you, right? You are just trying to figure out what your life looks like, what your relationship will look like, what your friendships will look like, who you'll be like a man. Now, with that in mind, what is the one piece of advice that the elderly Andrew Feinstein would tell the much younger Andrew?
I'm thinking about how to answer that question. I think that I think as a young person, it's really important to focus on one thing that you're really good at as you get into your, I would say almost later teens. I think at 16, you still need to be open to any and everything that's coming your way and probably into college. But at some point, and I'm seeing this a lot with this generation of young people, at some point when you're in your latter teens and early 20s, my advice to my younger self would be to focus on one thing and be really, really, really good at it. Do your 10,000 hours. Okay, that's kind of a general rule of becoming like almost like an expert at something. Do your 10,000 hours, be really good at something, be really successful at that thing that you've focused on, and then that will open up other doors so you can do other things. I think my younger self, I was trying to do too many different things at the same time. And look, we are where we are. You can't go back in time. That's why you're asking the question. But that would be the one piece of advice I would give, is really focus on one thing that you're really passionate about, dive into it, and stick with it before you start jumping into other things.
What would that one thing be?
Oh, to my younger self? Gosh, to my younger self. I think, I did it. I mean, I did what I wanted to do. I was a nationally syndicated cartoonist. I had comic strips in newspapers. I had animation on television. But within that bucket, I was trying to do like merchandising, and I was trying to do greeting cards, and I was trying to do other things that were just a deviation from the core mission, which was just be a great cartoonist. Yeah. And had I just focused on that more, I do openly question, could it have been, it was very successful, but could it have been more successful than it was?
Yeah. Thank you so much, Andrew. Learned a lot. I will certainly look for you to help me understand property. I think, especially like in a place like Rwanda, where I feel like everywhere is distressed, to use, the words that you used when you're describing Denver. There's lots of opportunities, and I'll really love to pick your brain on some of the moves that maybe I should be making. But obviously it won't be today. You're heading off to a meeting. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope you enjoyed yourself.
No, I love it. Sonny, you've been a great friend. You and your wife have been a great friend to me and my wife. My wife, Sarah, she loves this place, if not as much more than me. She's really planted some roots here, and you and Janet have been great friends to Sarah and myself. We should acknowledge that Sarah was the one that encouraged our family to move here in 2022. And that's when we really got to know each other. And you can't get projects like, and this, like I know this, you can't get projects done like the long form, and you can't get projects done like Zaria Court without a great partner in your household, right? In your household. So but what's my point? My point is anytime you want to talk about anything, my door is always open to you because your door has always been open to me. Yeah. And you always made our family feel welcome here. And that's really important. And you're part of our extended Rwanda family. So
yeah, man,
thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us. And good luck. I will be watching the news and seeing where Zaria goes next.
Hopefully this one's really busy and we're working on the next one the next time we talk.
Thank you so much, Andrew.
All right. Thank you. I was going to say Asante Sana. Murakoze Chani.
Namwe murakoze. And that's a wrap for this week's episode. Thank you so much for sticking with us until the very end. I'd actually love to hear your thoughts on today's conversation. So drop a comment below and join the discussion. You can also join us on the social media of your choice. And if you've enjoyed this episode, be sure to share it with a friend and invite them to the conversation. I'll see you next time. Until then, take care. Thank you, Kigali Marriott Hotel, for providing a venue for the long-form podcast to record. At the heart of Kigali's hospitality, Kigali Marriott offers everything from luxury stays to premier event spaces, fine dining, and top-tier conference facilities. Keep up with them at Kigali Marriott on socials and visit their website www.marriott.com.